Hello, my name is Jamie Lowe, and the Frankfurt Film Festival has received more than 100 entries from across 44 countries in the world. And I'll be chatting to some of the people behind our winning entries. And today we're going to start with Bryn, who is behind the incredible film, The Last Blast. So Bryn, great to have you here. And what an amazing film. Could you just set it out in a little synopsis, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, The Last Blast, it kind of celebrates the life of Sir Stirling Moss, who's a famous British racing driver, for those who don't know. He died sadly in 2020 at the age of 90, but he had this incredible victory. I mean, he had an amazing career, but there was this one incredible victory that he achieved for Mercedes-Benz in 1955 at the Mille Miglia, which is a road race from Brescia to Rome and back. It's 1,000 miles long. And he drove it in this Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR, which is the most beautiful car. And as a tribute to the car and to Sir Stirling Moss, Mercedes-Benz wanted us to be able to drive the car one final time through London to his house, which he'd never done. He'd never driven in London before, because they're about to put it in the museum in Stuttgart, so it'll never go on the road again. So our film kind of tells the story of that great race, using archive footage from the original race and some interview footage from Sir Stirling Moss before he passed away, and combines this with that kind of final last blast through London to back to his home.
And the access that you had to make this film was incredible, obviously helped in a way by Mercedes, but having access to create this sort of film must have been incredible for a director.
Yeah, I mean, it was a large undertaking, it has to be said. To try and film anything in London on the streets is hard enough, but when you've got a car worth tens of millions of pounds, we had to have all the police involved. We had 8 police outriders. We had to arrange everything beforehand with London transport, so we could drive in the bus lanes. We had to start at 4 in the morning on a Sunday because it would be the quietest possible time. We had to have permits from every borough in London to allow us to do it. Every building we went past, we had to have permission. So we even had special permission for the helicopter to fly really low. So it was a massive undertaking, but an incredible opportunity, and it was just fantastic to be involved with it.
So with a film like this, it's obviously a huge story. There's a lot of history behind it, but you told it in a very short space of time. Why did you choose to do it in such a short sort of format?
Well, really, we didn't have a choice. Mercedes wanted a very short film, something that they could use on social media, something that they could use to kind of promote the car and the driver. I mean, it could easily have been a 15-minute film or a 30-minute film and a documentary about Stirling Moss in his career in that race, but it felt like it was more about, this is the last time this car's ever going to go out on the road. And it was enough time to show what we needed to show, because we only had a short route. We just weren't allowed to drive around the whole of London. We had to really kind of be very specific about where we were going to go. And we only had 3 shots at it. We could do it 3 times and then that was it. The police were stopping us. So we just didn't really have that much time to, we had lots of cameramen on the ground, helicopters, tracking vehicles, photographers, everybody was ready for it to come past. But yeah, we just didn't have the time to make it a really long kind of feature length film.
In that same sense that you've kept the energy of this vehicle in just 3 minutes, you're telling its whole sort of story, which will then set it up for its, sad, sedentary life in a museum, maybe. But you've sort of given audiences the right amount of information in the right amount of time, in keeping with maybe the values of this vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, very, very true. I mean, it was meant to be driven very fast, very quickly. One of the real concerns of our kind of professional driver, who was a lovely chap from Stuttgart himself, his uncle had worked on the car with Sir Stirling Moss. He was worried because he was saying, can we drive at 100 miles per hour? And I was like, absolutely not. We can't. We can't. We can have the police with us, but we can't, break the law too much. I mean, they were very, very helpful, the police, that they would let us run some red lights and things like that if there was traffic. But, the car is meant to be driven fast and hard, and, and that we just couldn't do that. But we had a bit of fun. He tried to overtake them a few times and they had to kind of tell him to slow down. But yeah, I mean, it was perfect for the car. That's what it does best. Just drive fast and get it done. And that's what we did with the film.
And the police do actually make up quite a lot of the sort of visual elements of the documentary.
Yeah.
Why was it important to include so much of that? Because it's a car. It's supposed to be driven at 170 miles an hour, or it was at least. But the police did make up a lot of the visual elements of the documentary. What was your choice in that?
Yeah, so that was the kind of big decision at the beginning of the film. It was, we can give you police outriders and try and keep them a certain distance, but they still have to be close to the car. The car's worth over £100 million. So you cannot have an Uber driver suddenly decide like pull in front of you, or a cyclist or a London bus. And Mercedes were obviously very, very nervous that this car did not get damaged. And I said, the problem we have is, if we need the police to be close so they're stopping anyone coming, we're never going to get any clean shots without the police. So that had to be a decision. The police need to feature in the film and be part of it. And it's almost like this special, kind of group of people that are police that are taking the car on its journey. And therefore we had to make them part of that film, because trying to, with the helicopter, wherever the police were going to be, you were going to see them. With the tracking vehicle, you were going to see them. So we had to just make sure they were part of the film. The blue flashing lights just made it more, prestigious, I suppose. It was like something very special coming through the streets of London, and it had this kind of entourage with it.
And I think that is the story, isn't it? It's the story of having this car drive one final time in a spectacular way, and that couldn't have happened without police. So to ignore that would have been sort of unjust to the story of the film that you were producing. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it was a special moment, and the police, I mean, they were amazing. When we spoke to them, the chap who was in charge of the group of riders that came with us, the sergeant, he said, I put out a WhatsApp message saying, who wants to work on Sunday morning at 4 o'clock in the morning? And he said, I've never had every single one of my officers come back and say, yeah, I'm in, because they all are car and motorbike fans. And that car is something special. And the fact that it was never going to run again meant that they were all really keen to be involved in the project. And, it was just a fantastic team effort.
And of course, there's a family element to this as well. You're sort of reuniting this incredible machine with the sort of heritage that it has in terms of humans. Could you just describe the element of that to the film?
Yeah, of course. So one of the things that we thought would be really nice is to try and include Elliot Moss in the film, which is Sir Sterling Moss's son, because it was going back to his house and his wife still lives in that house. So we had to speak to the family to make sure they were happy with the whole idea, and they were delighted. But we thought it would be lovely if Elliot could kind of be there to welcome the car back at the end of the run. And he was very happy to be involved, and was delighted with the film at the end of it, which is always a relief because you never know until they see it. And he was wearing his dad's watch, which is in the film, and his watch was quite special because he doesn't have any leather or anything in it. When you look at the watch, it's just like two metal straps, which he found was much better for when he was driving because he got so dirty. So he was wearing his dad's watch, and we made sure it said 722, which is the name of the car. And the reason it's called the 722 is because it left at 7:22 in the morning in the race, and that's why it got called the 722. So we thought that was quite a nice thing, that the car would arrive at 7:22 in the morning back at his house, and for his son to see the car for the last time.
And one of the things we've maybe ignored so far up until now is that the fact that it's a fantastic film. It tells the story completely, but the organization that went into putting this together must have been a massive feat for yourself and your team.
Yeah, it was huge. We worked with another company we've worked on many occasions, who are called Samuelson Wiley, and they work on kind of the logistics side, because just getting the car to London at the right time, it has to be, very well looked after. They were having it kept in garages by MI5 buildings to keep it safe at night. I mean, there's all sorts of things going on. The fact that we had to get every car parking space, got the cars removed by the council so that the road would be empty when we arrived. The RAC agreeing to allow us to drive past and get their doorman to come out. I mean, it was a huge effort by a lot of people, and took a lot of time, weeks beforehand, just to make sure that everything was in preparation for that, because we just literally had 2 hours and we had to get it all done. So yeah, it was a big feat of helicopters and crew and everything coming together at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. It was a big job.
Almost true to the original story of the car, though.
Yes, exactly right.
So time has been sort of a major element throughout this whole film, even, crossing paths into the production element of it. As a filmmaker, how is tackling a short form documentary? Because, I know that stories can sort of blossom and develop into hours and hours and hours if you let them. But having the eye to boil it down into the minute or two or three, it's really difficult, but also it's really an important skill as a filmmaker.
Yeah, well, I suppose I'm quite lucky that with my directing career, we do documentaries, we've also done commercials, and that's a very different beast, but also teaches you need to get everything in 30 seconds or 60 seconds. So filming this, we knew we had to just try and pick our shots. We knew throughout that run we were only going to have maybe 60 to 90 seconds of the actual run, because we needed to tell the story on the archive as well. And it is difficult. We probably ended up with a 10-minute film to begin with, and we had to cut that right down, and it's very difficult. And you think you should keep some things, and other people might think that something else is more important. So it's a bit of a group effort towards the end, with the client being happy, what they feel they want involved, what they want included, the family, what they will want included, and what you as a director would like included, because you just happen to love that shot or think this one's amazing and it has to be in. So yeah, it's quite an interesting process in the edit to cut that down, but it worked in the end, so we're very happy.
Yeah, like I say, that the story had the same energy that I felt you were trying to deliver with this story of this very, very fast car. Did you have a lot to do with the car? Did you sit in it? Did you get to take it around the block?
Well, I wasn't allowed to drive it, but I did get in it, and that was quite an eye-opener. I mean, there's no seat belts, there's no airbags, there's the very stiff clutch. And these guys who you just have so much respect for the people that had to drive this car. I mean, to look at it is a masterpiece, and it is very beautiful, but inside it is very basic. It's a steering wheel and 3 pedals and a gear stick, and that's it. So but yeah, I mean, it's quite nerve-wracking, because everybody's so worried about it, because every time it even just comes off a truck, it's thousands of pounds on the insurance just to move it every time. So when we were putting it on a low loader, and they're like cranking the wheels, and getting it stuck on, and you're thinking, oh my God, please be gentle with it. And there were quite a lot of nervous people, but it's an amazing thing. When they turn it on, the engine noise is quite incredible. And that's the other thing. I mean, if you're driving it at 100 miles per hour, we'd be waking up the whole of London driving past. The residents would not be happy. It's got the most phenomenal sound when it gets going. But yes, it's a lovely car. If you ever get the chance to see it, you should go and see it.
And that brings us on to the sort of future of this story, because you know, your film tells it to a point, but this car will now have another life in a museum in Stuttgart.
That's right. I mean, it will stay there now, I think, just because it is the only one. So every time they take it out, you're risking something happening to the car. It's meant to be one of the most valuable cars in the world now. So I think they just want to keep it safe. Obviously, it allows people to go and see it, and hopefully this film will let people understand what it used to sound like. But you never know, maybe in 10 years they might take it to a special show or something, but I don't think anyone's going to be driving it anytime soon now. They'll just have to see it in the museum.
But I mean, that's the beauty of sort of factual and documentary filmmaking. It's telling the stories that are behind the doors of this car, behind the walls of a building. It's bringing another element of information to people that would have, you know, walked past it in a museum and thought, oh, that's a lovely little car, it looks like it could be out of a Bond film, but they didn't know the story about it. And that's what this film does. It sort of gives this car, maybe cements its heritage, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very famous car for lots of different reasons, because of its driver, because of the race. I mean, particularly the race, because that record has never been broken since the Stirling Moss made it. The fact that he drove at 100 miles per hour on average over 1,000 miles, which means he was doing 170 a lot of the time. So yeah, to create something that hopefully will last, which will tell that story, and a little bit more modern, because lots of people have made films about the car and the older archive footage. So it was nice to be able to put it on the streets now and see how it can still run and still drive around is quite special. But yeah, it's an incredible thing.
And what did you learn from creating this film, and how will this inform your creative decisions going forward?
Oh, so there's so many things that you learn. I don't know whether any of it will help me on the next one, because it's quite a unique project, and you know, I've never had to take a very kind of unique car out on the streets with so much protection. But it certainly taught me that these guys certainly knew what they were doing when they were driving it, because yeah, it was a pretty impressive thing. And just to have really good insurance, I would say that for a production.
But maybe let's talk about putting a story so big as this into something short form. You know, short form is probably going to be the way that a lot of filmmakers are going to be making their content in the future, with, you know, the influx of social media and the impact of social media content. Is this going to be something that you'll do more of, sort of short form factual?
I think now, with all of the projects we work on, it feels like the clients want a short version as well. So whether you're just trying to capture someone's imagination, I suppose it's a bit like the Hollywood trailer, isn't it? It's throw everything you've got from that film into 30 seconds and make people want to watch more. And I think we've seen that, you know, over the last 15 years almost, but certainly now everybody wants, can you tell me that story? Yes, I'll have my 30-minute documentary, but can you tell me that story in 5 minutes as well? Because sadly, not everybody wants to watch a 30-minute documentary anymore, which is unfortunate, but that's the times we live in, and people just want to see something on their phone. So you've got to capture their imagination. You've got to make it punchy. You've got to make it interesting. And I think going forward, that's only going to be more. I mean, I think even, was it Apple TV started to make programs that were only going to run for 7 minutes or something as a test. See, that's what people can cope with before they switch off, which is very sad, I think. But you know, if that's the way we have to keep people entertained, then we'll do what needs to be done. And it can be done. I mean, we were lucky. We were talking about one race and one moment in time. If you had to talk about someone's whole, you know, life story, it would be very difficult. But you know, for this, it worked. But I think, you know, going forward, that is certainly going to be, you know, part of it. Is there's always going to be a short form of everything we do now.
And Bryn, what advice do you have to budding filmmakers? Because the Frankfurt Film Festival is all about sort of, you know, bringing up talent, and lots of people will be interested in this story because it's such a huge client. and such an important story. For budding filmmakers, what advice would you have?
Well, I think for me, I mean, I used to be really into music. That was my thing. And I got in a band and we went on tour. And I took a camcorder and I videoed our kind of tour and videoed all the members of the band. And that was my first kind of taste of being creative, being a filmmaker, being a director. And I loved it. And fortunately, because the music was so bad and I couldn't make a living out of that was quite helpful further down the line. But what I'm kind of getting at is try and do something that you enjoy, that you are passionate about. So when you're filming it, you're enjoying it. Take a subject, because even if you're not going to get paid for it straight away, do something that's really interesting to you, that you've got a passion about. It could be anything that you want to film about, but then at least when you put that film together, it will be a part of you, and it makes you more creative. You know, you've got to have a creative vision. It's so important. And, you know, the key to being a director is having that creative vision and being able to explain it to everybody else so they kind of create what you want. But, you know, go for it. It's an amazing career. So pick up a camera and self-film some stuff yourself to begin with. You know, go and do something. You know, interview your grandfather who was in World War II, or the guy down the road who's done something incredible that someone's done. You know, go. There's so many interesting stories and so many interesting people and so many interesting places to go. This allows you to actually kind of enjoy that and meet some incredible people. So try and grab a subject matter that you love and then go and just start creating some films around it, and you'll learn your craft. You know, you'll learn what makes a good shot, what makes a good story, and 100% go for it, because it's great.
All right, Bryn, thank you so much for talking to us today here at the Frankfurt Film Festival, and congratulations on a really epic piece of cinematography. Thank you so much to you also for watching, and be sure to check out the Frankfurt Film Festival website for more details on our winners and, of course, their fantastic films.